Heyo, I'm Tyson, welcome back. Welcome to what maybe we'll call Modeling Mondays. It's definitely not my first SketchUp video, but I want to try and put these out on Mondays, so hold me to it. Today we're going to look at how you can create SketchUp models of dust collection adapters, dust collection hose adapters. I don't know, these things where you take the various type of hose sizes out there, and we all know there's just so many, no standards, and you're going to adapt them so that you can make them work for various tools or various whatever scenario you've got. And we're going to look at, let's call it 3 methods in SketchUp to do that. So let's jump to it. The first method is the simplest, and it's just going to use native SketchUp tools. The Follow Me tool, actually, and you can create dust adapters like these, which are effectively cones. And if you have not used the Follow Me tool before, it works like this. You're going to create a shape, which is going to be the profile of the adapter we're going to create, and you take that shape and you're going to lathe it around a circle like that, and that creates the adapter that you would then export and 3D print. Now, one thing to know about the Follow Me tool, this circle has 60 sides and this one has 24, the default 24 sides, and 24 will work fine. I like to turn it up for the purposes of 3D printing to around 60 sides. You don't need to go incredibly high, then you're just putting in details that are unnecessary. But I do like to use, let's use Follow Me here, and use Follow Me here. And if we look at the segments that are created, again, this was 24 sides and this was 60, and you can see there's more. And your surface is going to be a little bit smoother. Again, you don't need to go up much past that. You can go higher if you want, but you don't really need to go above 60 or maybe 80, something like that. So with that as one intro, let's build out an example. I'm going to draw a circle. Again, when I draw this circle, you see down here my sides are at 60, but I could, let's just change them, let's say to 80, just to say you can change them whenever. So I've got a circle. Doesn't matter how big this is. Just need a circle, and then I'm going to draw from that center point a line straight up in the blue direction, out in the red, down in blue, and back. And you know what? See, by drawing in the red, I should have been more careful. Let me draw that in the green direction. Green, blue. I'm creating a surface to build the shape on. Now when I draw this next circle, we're actually going to draw a guideline, and I'm going to draw it out for half of the width. We're going to build half of the profile. So a typical hose that I might adapt to would be somewhere in the range of 1 5/16, let's say 1 5/16 of an inch. And then let's say I'm adapting that to something smaller, at, let's just say 0.5. So I've got my guidelines. I'm going to draw a line up, over, and up. And then I could select these lines, and for 3D printing, I'm going to use the offset tool and offset those, let's just say 1/8 of an inch. That's about all we'll need. And that's it. I could erase out these shapes that I don't need, and because I built that based on the center of this circle, I'll select the circle, go to Follow Me, select the profile, and we've done it. I could take this, select it all, group it, and then go up and export this as an STL file. and send it to 3D printing. That's as simple as it needs to be. A couple things you can do, so let me undo a few steps. If you want to come in and add a little bit of smoothing to your curves, not necessarily per se, but let's say I take an arc tool and I've changed the sides to 6 here because this is going to be a small arc. So I draw an arc here, maybe one here, and we'll just smooth that out. So select this, offset it out. Again, 1/8 of an inch is about all we'll need. Erase the parts that I don't need, select the circle, go to follow me, select the shape. I've got hidden geometry turned on, but there you can see. This should, because we drew that straight line, we should still be able to extend this if we need this longer. Same thing up here. And just as an example, if we look over here, because some, however you may need to, if your hose has one of these little hooks in it, I'll just come back to this shape, draw a little bit, draw a rectangle, say. And then merge that in. So you can do a lot with this when you're measuring. There we go, follow me. And now we've got a little bit of a lip that we could hook to. So however you need to do it, this is, follow me, you'll get a lot of pieces out of just doing this, because usually you're just adapting from a larger piece, say this 4-inch pipe, down to a 2-inch hose. And so this is gonna be all you need. Now in some cases, this one, which is kind of has this fun, I had to switch filament halfway through. This one was for the domino, so that I could adapt a 2-inch hose to the domino joiner. The problem I found after I made this is that it didn't give me a lot of room because the handle's right here, and so I took this one and made this out of it, where I could then put that on, and it gave me enough room to grab and use the tool. This method takes a tool called Curviloft. So this is the next method we're going to use. We're going to adapt the follow me tool and use Curviloft. So Curviloft is a plugin. You can get it from the Sketchucation extension store. It's by a developer called Fredo6. So if you get the extension store from Sketchucation, you got to go to their site to get it, and look at in here, you're going to need this libfredo, library stands for library Fredo. You're going to need that to run any of Fredo6's tools, and then you can just get Curviloft and install it here. It's free, and it's really quite remarkable. So Curviloft looks like this, and as an example, let me just scale a few circles and move them a little bit. So if I move this one over here and then scale it back. All right, so we've got these circles, they're out of alignment, they're different sizes. I'm going to delete these surfaces. I'm going to select all of them and then click on this top Curviloft. And you can see what it's doing is it's creating a lofted geometry between those shapes. So we can take these different shapes. And in fact, let me take, let's say one of these, I'll quickly group it just so that I can twist it, move this up, group it so I can twist it quickly. So let me ungroup those. So you can take shapes, they don't have to fully be aligned. Hit Curviloft, and it kind of creates some really interesting results. So I just can click to accept it. And you see we've got this really interesting undulating shape. Well, that's going to help us in creating kind of different shapes that we might want to use for our hose adapters. So let's create one. Here we've got an example like we did before of the follow me. And in this case, I've built this out so that we need to build the sort of framework and then we'll adapt it. So in this case, just like before, we would have built this with the correct size so that I know this is the right shape for the hoses I'm trying to meet up. But now that I've got this, I've just grouped it. In fact, maybe even I'll lock it so I can't affect this. Now I'm going to draw some circles. I'm going to hit the up arrow key to lock to the blue direction. Draw a circle here, hit up again, draw a circle here. I'll select this, use the move tool, make a copy, select it up. So we've got our first two shapes. Now let me draw another circle. And I'll select this circle, make a copy of it down. All right, if we use Curviloft right now on these shapes, we'd get kind of what we'd get with the the follow me tool. But in this case, let's take these shapes, we just select them all, move them aside so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to take these top two circles and move them over like that. Let's say, again, something like this where we're trying to move it a little bit off axis. And perhaps we'll even take those, let me group them temporarily and skew them and then ungroup again. Now, Curviloft, the way that I found it works best, you can select these surfaces and use Curviloft on those, but it'll get mixed up between the outer and the inner rings. So I find it's simpler to just delete those surfaces. I'm going to select 1, 2, and I'm selecting all the outer rings, 3, 4. I'm going to group those, 1, 2, 3, 4. The inner rings, I'm going to group those just to make it easy to select them, because this will work on Curviloft will work on this group. So I've got those outer rings selected. I hit Curviloft. Now notice something here. We've got sort of, it's kind of working, but it's interpolating the shape in a very sort of undulating way. Up here under spline method, we can change the interpretation. And so it's a good idea to jump through a few of these to see what's going to work best. Now this is the outer ring, and one of these is probably going to work best. There's something weird happening right here, but I think it's still going to work. So I'm going to click to accept that. We got something weird going on there. Do the interior one. I'm going to take this and hide it for a moment. So this interior one, hit this, change the spline method so that you get that, and accept that. Okay, if I unhide, it'll create these as new groups and leave your original geometry if you want to keep messing with it. Again, that was a little weird. I might go in to figure out what, but that would still work. So I might do some tweaking to see what's going on, but right now this will work. This is the idea. I'll select both of these, ungroup them. Let me turn hidden geometry off for a moment. And then I just need to weld these together, and I can do that by tracing over an edge here to create a surface, and over an edge here to create a surface. Delete that, and same thing from underneath. So I'm going to go endpoint to endpoint. I may reverse these faces just to keep all the faces the same. There we go. Again, aside from that little thing, and I would change up a little bit, maybe change the spline, maybe change the spacing if that really bugged me. But this, there we go. Now we've got a dust collector or dust adapter, dust hose adapter that starts here, goes off at an angle. And if we needed to extend this out, because these were in line, we could extend this, extend this. So group it, export as STL, and send it to your 3D printer. So that's method 2, is using Curviloft, using that plugin. And again, as examples, that's how this was created, that's how this was created. Even this one, which is a little more so, was created, and that one's for my miter saw, but was a nice way to bring in a 2-inch hose directly to the miter saw. Now, one thing with Curviloft, let me show one set of errors, or it seems like an error that can happen. So I've got this group of edges, and you see what this is comprised of. If I select these and hit Curviloft, if you look at the results, they're going inside each other. That can happen when you have some kind of extreme shapes trying to resolve. But the tool is pretty smart. All I have to do is click, say on this point here, click and drag up to one of these points to say, hey, why don't you try resolving it from these points? And you can see my results instantly are a lot better. So if you have geometry that's sort of interfering with each other, try clicking between points to redefine what points should be resolved. So I'll click to accept that, and those results are better. One more thing, as long as we've got this example up. So I will click, let's say here to here, get better results. Again, test different spline methods because you're going to get different results. And your segment count here, if you want more detail, again, you don't need to turn it up super high, but you can get a little more detail. And always, test your different spline methods. So the last thing that let's look at is this one. This was an example where I had a very specific tool. I've got this Makita belt sander. It's a workhorse, but it's an older tool. It has this really, let's call it interesting, the dust port on it. It's not round, it wouldn't fit anything. So in this case, what I did is I went in and measured the existing tool, the existing dust port, and I created this simple model to represent that. This is accurate as far as the size and scale of it. I just had to measure it out and create this. That was a starting point to create this simple adapter. So if we took this and this was created to fit on that exact port, and then it just slides down on it. And once I had that piece, I printed just that to make sure the size was correct and that this would work and this would slide on. It was just a little bit loose, so I could tweak the results, but once I knew that that would work, that was the starting point. Then I just need to take that and adapt it to a hose. So in my shop, I've got a couple of these 2-inch hoses. So I've got the piece and I've got the hose size, and without going exactly through how this works, this is how it was all resolved. You take the piece, in this case, the little adapter that I already proved was going to work, and I copied this. So I copied this surface and paste it in place, or paste it. And then with that, which is this piece here, you see I took that, I expanded it a little bit, and I scaled the center up, and then I twisted a piece a little bit, and then I've got my hose here. And with those pieces, I could then use Curviloft on the outer and inner shapes of those. This was definitely a case where it, had to go through the spline methods, and I had to reconnect a few points to make it work. But that gave me this result. The outer and inner pieces that start from exactly this shape. So now I can take the original piece, slap it up against this other piece, and they should meet perfectly because I used that shape as a starting point. Then I'll ungroup these and group them, and like we did before, come in and close up any gaps. I made it a little bit, extended it a little bit, but that was it. Then of course I have to turn it up in preparation for printing, but this was the piece. It printed out. It fits really well. Very, very specific hose adapter that you can create using SketchUp and 3D printing. So it's a nice method. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have questions. This is definitely not something, if you're really brand new to SketchUp, there's probably a lot in here that this was fast, but hopefully give you an idea of what you can do using SketchUp and both the native tools and the Curviloft plugin. There's other methods out there for doing similar stuff, but this one I've found to work really well. So, all right, thanks. Let me know what you think, and see you next Monday.